Yo, what's good, my people? You're locked in with me again, and today we're diving deep into how CSS actually works. Now, you ever wonder what's going on behind the scenes when you style a website? We're about to break it down from how the browser reads your HTML to how CSS turns your code into a clean looking site. Now, a quick little backstory. I'm a self-taught web developer, been in the game for 3 years, and I didn't take the typical route. No computer science degree, and no degree at all, actually. Just a lot of grind, a lot of code, and here I am. So if you're thinking you need a degree to master this and to get into the industry, I'm living proof that that's not the case. Let's go. When a browser loads a web page, it has to blend the content with the styling. Now it does this in several steps. Now first it loads the HTML, then it converts the HTML and passes it into a DOM. Now the DOM represents the document in the computer's memory, and it actually stands for Document Object Model. Now then it fetches the linked resources like images and CSS. So this is where it goes through here. Now it loads the CSS, passes the CSS, and organizes the rules into buckets like IDs and classes. After this, it builds the render tree, applying the styles to the DOM. And then finally, it paints the visual display on the screen. Now different browsers may handle these steps slightly different, but that's the basic flow. Now the DOM has a tree-like structure for your HTML. So every element, attribute, and chunk of text becomes a node in this structure. Now these nodes are connected by relationships. Some are parents, some are children, and children have siblings. Now, mastering the DOM helps you design, debug, and maintain your CSS. The DOM is where your styles meet the content. So in the browser DevTools, which you can go by right-clicking and inspect in most browsers, you can navigate the DOM to select the elements and check which CSS rules are applying. So you can see here, this H1 has a font size of 1.5 M. Now, rather than hitting you with a long, dry explanation, let's just break it down with a real example to see how an actual HTML snippet transforms into a DOM structure. So let's go through this code right here. Now, here we've got this paragraph with 3 span elements within it. So as we can see here, in the DOM, the paragraph element is the parent of these spans. Now its children are a text node and 3 span elements. Now these 3 span elements are actually sibling elements. So just to go over it, the paragraph is the parent. These are the 3 children elements. However, to each other, they're siblings. Now the first span contains the text cascading. The second span contains the text style. And the third span contains the text sheets. Now the browser processes the HTML, builds the DOM tree, and then renders it in the browser. All right, let's throw some CSS into the mix to style it up a bit. We'll keep the HTML the same with the span elements within the paragraph element. Now let's just go to our styles.css. Here, I've already got some styles that I've put in before. So let's close this up. Let's target the span, and let's just add a border, just a thin border of 1 pixel solid, and black. Now let's change the background color to something noticeable, like let's see, lime. Now here's what the browser does. It reads the HTML and builds out the DOM, the Document Object Model. Now then it grabs the CSS, which is, as we can see here. So what we've written here, we could just see within the browser. So then it grabs the CSS and spots the rule for the span elements. Now it then applies the CSS rule to each of the 3 span elements that we have. Now finally, it paints the styled output onto the screen here. Now also with the browser, you can, unselect, or let's say if we wanted to change it to, let's say, purple instead of lime, we could do that. And I could even change the color of the text within that to, let's say, white. So you can see here. Now, so what happens when a browser stumbles on a CSS property or selector that it doesn't recognize? Now, this is simple. It just skips it and moves on. So let's actually just refresh this back to what we had. So if a browser comes up with a CSS property or value it doesn't understand, it just straight up ignores it and continues on to the next decoration. Now, this can happen if you make a typo or if the CSS is too new for that browser to handle. Now, same thing with selectors. If a browser can't figure out a selector, it'll ignore the whole rule and jump to the next one. Now, for example, because I'm in the UK. So we have the British spelling of certain words. If I use, let me actually add something here. So let's add a new paragraph tag that, so let's say I want this text to be large, bold, and blue. If I save that, you can see that whole element, the paragraph element. Now let's style the paragraph. Let's add the font weight. Yeah, let's just make it bold. Now, if I was to use the English spelling or the British, let's just say that the British spelling of color, so not what's showing up here. So COLUR, and let's change that to blue. And I'll add the font size. Font size to be, let's say, 200%. As we can see here, it's already coming up with squiggly lines saying that this isn't a recognized property. Yeah, if I save this, you can see here that it is showing up as bold and the font size is bigger than it was before. So these two styles are working. However, color isn't being applied because that isn't the actual correct property name. Now, this behavior is actually super useful. It lets you use new CSS features without breaking your whole site. If the browser doesn't get it, that's no worries. It just ignores it and then falls back on the stuff that it does understand. So let's actually now change this. Take out the U in the word color and put it to the American spelling of color. And as you can see here, that is now working. And if I was to just put this to make it a bit smaller, so 150%, you see that, as you can see, all the styling is working. Now, for example, some older browsers don't support calc, which let's just create a class of box, and I'll put a width of 500 pixels, and then we use the calc. We do 100%, let's do minus 50 pixels. And I'll just create a div with the class box. So actually in VS Code with Emmet, you could just put the full stop there in front of the element that you want to create, and then do this, put the box, and then it'll then create a div with the class of box. So let's save that. If we're in an older browser that doesn't support calc, the calculating function, the older browser will then have to use the pixel width, while the newer ones will override it with calc. Now, we'll dive into more ways to handle browser support in future videos. All right, fam, that's a wrap. Now you know how CSS actually works behind the scenes, from loading the HTML, building the DOM, to applying styles and painting the final product that you see on the screen. We've covered everything from how the browser interprets your CSS to handling those moments when it doesn't understand certain rules. Now, if you haven't watched my previous videos in the series, have a look at this playlist right here, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.